All right, gang, welcome to Digital Illustration, February 22, GRA 2156. This class is all about vector-based drawing, scalable graphics. Most of you know it as logo design, digital illustration, digital drawing. The difference between, say, this type of design and, say, advertising design is because that is pixel-based or raster-based. This is scalable graphics, so symbols, illustrations, digital illustrations, things that look like a drawing but are printed in an illustration style, logo design. There's so many applications nowadays, 2D animation. There's so many applications nowadays for vector-based drawing. This class is all about that. Obviously, you're using Adobe Illustrator for this particular class. I have students in the past that have access to an iPad or some kind of Samsung Galaxy pencil-based tablet environment. Just know that if you do some of your illustrations in that environment, if it has brushes, brushes are raster-based and need to be vectorized in Illustrator in order for it to meet the scalable vector graphics requirement of the course. I've had students do some absolutely beautiful work on drawing tablets and on iPads and Samsung Galaxies and all that good stuff. I'm open to that as we learn the drawing process. Just know that our book and the software of choice currently in our industry is some version of an Adobe-based vector drawing program. I use Illustrator. On my iPad, I use Draw. Now they have Fresco, which is the latest of their vector-based drawing apps. So just know that the tools, the process, the things we're looking at in this class are applicable across different applications. It's just what Illustrator does. Now Affinity has Designer. Affinity Designer is an app. You pay 20 bucks once, you download it to your iPad. It does vector and raster-based drawing. It's a beautiful program. It also has a pen tool. It also uses a Pathfinder technique. It also uses a lot of the things we do in Illustrator. They just kind of repurposed it and renamed it for their particular application. iPads are getting crazy powerful. Samsung Galaxy is getting crazy powerful. The tablet environment with the digital pencil getting really responsive and really good. So just know as we're working through the process, there are other tools are available out there, but you also have to know how to use those as they work and apply in digital illustration. I do a lot of drawing on my iPad now, but I know if I go into Procreate or some of the other programs, once I use an airbrush to draw, that is a raster-based Photoshop style tool. That is not vector-based. It has to be brought into Illustrator and high fidelity traced in order for you to get a vector scalable graphic out of an airbrush technique that you use in an iPad environment. So just know that. I'm open to other things as we do out of book projects and things like that. We just want to make sure that the end PDF is completely vector and completely scalable as we explore. And I've gotten some really amazing stuff from students that they've produced in other environments that they've created into a vector environment. So I get it. Touching a pencil to glass and drawing like you would draw on a piece of paper is very appealing. Very appealing to me because I used to draw in sketchbook after sketchbook after sketchbook when I was in my infancy of design school and design professionally design world. I did a lot of stuff on paper and pencil. So I've been slowly migrating some of my illustration work, some of my symbol work, some of my combination mark logo design where it includes a graphic of some kind. I've started to use my iPad for it because it really is a beautiful thing and I can do finished artwork there. And it's really nice if you use Adobe, any of their apps. It's cloud-based. I can send it to my iMac at home and I can finish my illustration work on my computer, MacBook or iMac, but have all of my layers and all of my preliminary work done on my iPad. So that's pretty awesome. So technology is swinging quite a bit, but we are in Illustrator world here right now. So you either need to have access via any of the labs here at Hodges, a home computer, personal computer, laptop, desktop that you might have access to, that you have some version of Illustrator in a student edition that you can download from adobe.com, or I have some students access Illustrator via our VLab, vlab.hodges.edu. That's not the best process because it's kind of like pulling data through a straw. Depending on how good your connection is, it could get really slow if you're trying to use Illustrator over the cloud. So I tell every student, if it's possible, either use a lab, go to a lab, maybe your work has Illustrator, you have a home computer, try to get the at minimum the $19.99 for 30 days of Adobe Illustrator. Adobe CC is like 20 bucks a month. If you're a designer, if you have aspirations to be a designer, you have access to a computer at home, PC or Mac. I recommend having access, some kind of access to the software, because it's like riding the bike. The more you practice, the better you get at it, the more comfortable you feel at it. Every time I teach a class, a student's like, man, I haven't used that software in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. I'm not sure if I know how to use it again. Well, it's nice to have access to it other places so that if you can't sleep, get home from work, get up early, you just have access to it, then there's more apt to you to have the process of trying some things, practicing some things, or using some things if you have access to it in other places. Not to mention that chapter 3 in our book, the files are 2 gigs, lots of art files in chapter 3. And you'll notice when I navigate through Canvas, I couldn't upload it to Canvas chapter 3 because it doesn't like 2 gigs. It likes like under a gig each time I upload something. So it was like, you can't upload this for students to download it. They have to download it themselves, which I'm going to show you tonight. So most of you have had me in class before. You know that I love the announcement board. I'm going to share files. If you draw something and I think it's cool, I'm going to share it to the class. Like I like to share in the announcement section. Right. So you already see I have the Tuesday night announcement, meaning I'm going to be lecturing at 6:30 every Tuesday night in the classroom in room 221. It is a technology enhanced course, which means I lecture live in the classroom. I give you the option also to watch it live at home. And I also give you the option to watch it later recorded in Zoom. I just noticed from my lecture last night, I was doing a design study class, that the new Zoom app is like really cool. Like it allows you to download the chat transcript. It lets you do the video, the audio, like it's been enhanced a little bit. It's pretty cool. So this is the story, you know, in the Zoom link, it pops up in your calendar each night or each week at 6:30 that the lecture is going on. We've been doing this for quite a while, even before the whole COVID virus thing that has been going on for the last 2.5 years. The Fisher School of Technology, we do the enhanced courses. I've also noticed the pendulum really swinging to remote learning because jobs require remote learning. Like there's a really good possibility if you're in IT, in design, in anything that requires a computer to do your job, that you're going to be among a team of 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 people, and you're all going to live around the world. I mean, it's the nature of the beast. I know a bunch of people who have become remote workers over the last year to 2 years, and they were jobs they never thought would ever be something that they had to do Zoom calls on, share files over email, use digital drop boxes, like learn to communicate from distance. So at the bare minimum in this course, get comfortable with watching recorded Zooms, posting in discussion boards, uploading files to the assignment links. Just get comfortable with a virtual environment because there's no going back. I got to be honest with you. Every single day I get an email from Indeed.com about design jobs, and I would say 75% of the jobs have some version of remote. I would say 50% of the jobs have become totally remote. I mean, it's a scary thing to see. Salary, 55 to 70,000, remote. You can be anywhere in the world. I mean, there are so many jobs like that, entry-level jobs, 42 to 55. Job is in South America, remote. I mean, it's kind of scary to think remote, but get comfortable with the TEC environment because honestly, it's getting to the point where I used to have clients in the Netherlands. I used to do a lot of overseas work where they pay me in PayPal and I would just convert the money when the rate was really good. Whenever the euro was good, I would cash out my money and I would leave it sit there because I could make 20% on my job by letting it sit there till I needed to cash it out. That used to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did a logo for a fashion store in Amsterdam. Well, yeah, I did, because it was a job online. I met someone through someone. That used to be like rare. Now it's the norm. If you talk to a visual communicator, a brander, a web designer, a graphic designer, a marketing person, if you talk to any of these IT people, networking, software development, database people, all of these people are now like, the norm is, I live in Montana and I work for a company in Silicon Valley. I mean, it really is kind of interesting how the world is evolving here. So it'll be interesting to see how the salaries evolve around the world, because if I could work for a company in San Francisco making $120,000 a year, and that same job is a job in Florida that pays $60,000 a year, and I can live in Florida but work for the company in San Francisco, it's a no-brainer, right? I would absolutely do that. So be open to the process of technology. The book we use is great. The projects we use are fun. The out of book things, I try to bring real world projects into the environment. I think you're going to have a good time with. It's a 2100 level course. So hopefully you explored the digital vector-based drawing world before, even if it was just a little bit. The first 2 chapters in your book, which is Learning Module 1, are pretty much basic step-by-step, very early, you never used it before, well, chapters. So we're going to give you the opportunity to do a bunch of little mini projects through your book just to get the ball rolling. I'll quickly be introducing some out of book assignments to really expedite your desire to draw. Also know that in vector drawing world, it eats up a lot of time. I mean, if you really get into drawing something, like your out of book project is a little hot dog mascot for Matt's Red Hots, which is in San Carlos Park right here on 41. If you haven't been there, they have beautiful murals on the outside of the building. It's a really neat place. It could take you 12 hours to draw your little mascot. I mean, honestly, easily. So the book projects don't take a lot of time. They're all little mini projects to show you where things are in Illustrator, how to merge and unite things, how to subtract things, how to use the Pathfinder tool, different ways to draw using layers, different things like that. Those are quick little mini projects, but the out of book projects could be in the 10 to 15 hour process range. So just be aware of that as we're working through our learning modules, that when I introduce an out of book project, I expect there to be a little time level commitment, because it's probably a real world project. And if I like it, I'm probably going to show it to the clients we're using. I had a student last semester in design study class. I gave her a local nonprofit as her design study. They loved it so much. She's doing the vehicle graphics and some other things for them now, social media, t-shirt designs, because her design study was really well done. Good rebrand, nice illustrations, good styling, thoughtful typography, like a really good job. Well, that spurred into a really nice professional job. So when you see the out of book specifically, make sure you commit a little time to it, because you get into it what you kind of get out of it what you put into it. And remember, design or anything in the marketing, branding, visual communication realm is very portfolio based. I have so many students that take classes that may or may not be specifically in the design track, but they love to draw. They like playing with pictures. They want to build a website. They have an idea for a small business and they want to build a logo for a small business. I have so many students in so many tracks. Design really is interdisciplinary, but remember, no matter what track you're in, if there's a skill that you're learning in any given class, they want to see it by portfolio, right? They want to see your portfolio. Oh, you know how to draw digitally? Let me see some things that you've drawn. Yeah, the book projects are great for step-by-step and reinforcing basic skills, but truly the portfolio is showcased by out-of-book assignments, typography, color choice, what you drew, how you drew it, your style. And also remember, I've had hundreds of students go through digital illustration class. Everyone draws differently. Everybody visualizes differently. Everybody uses the pen tool differently. So don't expect, if I post something in the announcement section of something I think that's really well done, Don't compare yours to theirs, because everyone does it differently. Everyone sees color differently. Everyone draws shapes differently. I'm actually looking for your personality to come out in your digital illustrations. I don't want everyone to look exactly the same. Of course, when you draw the anchor in chapter 1, you cut the little hole out of the anchor, everyone's anchor is going to look exactly the same. I would expect it to have some similar personality. Will it be perfect? No one's will be perfect. Everyone's will have a little bit of jigginess, a little bit of imperfection. That's the nature of the beast. But the out of book assignments, I want to see your personality, what colors you like, how you draw. Nothing is perfect, right? There's no such thing as perfection. I tell every student in every class, I can look at projects I won awards on. I can look at logos that I've drawn that are global and they're recognized in other areas of the world now. And I did them in the 90s and I look at them now and I'm like, man, I could have done a lot better than I did then, right? Design is subjective. What I'm trying to get out of the course is that you learn the outcomes, you get comfortable using a tool, you understand what vector-based design is, and you explore avenues. You explore different things. If you have an iPad, download a free drawing app and give it a try, right? Even if you just use your finger on the screen. I mean, there's lots of ways to do this thing we call art and design. And you always see it in every success story. Someone came across someone in their life that said they weren't good at something, they couldn't do something, like it wasn't for them. I firmly believe there's an innate ability in everyone to do some version of visual communication or design. I firmly believe that. Maybe you're just good at taking pictures. Maybe you can see things spatially. Maybe you're good picking letters, numbers, and symbols out. Maybe you're good at type. Maybe you're good at color. Everyone has an innate ability. So I hope at the end of the 4 weeks, I pull out what that ability is and you feel a little bit more comfortable. When you're done with the course, you might still say, I hate drawing. I'm not a drawer. Even though I can put a photo down and trace over the top of it, I don't like it. And that's okay too. But at least you know how it's done. You know what the professionals are doing to produce it. So even if you only have to use someone else's inside of your design, because you're working at a corporation like Hertz, where they have illustrators and they have designers, and maybe the illustrator gives you a vector drawing of a car and you have to include it in a social media campaign that talks about how they're going eco and energy efficient with their cars because they bought a bunch of Teslas. You got to know that that file was a vector file. It was exported as an EPS file, and that EPS file is being put into Photoshop or whatever program you're using for animating. It started as a scalable graphic. So even if you don't love it at the end of 4 weeks, you should understand what it is, what the process is, and kind of how it works. Okay, so that's my little song and dance to start the class. Technology, why it's important, all the places you can go with it, and what we're trying to get out of the class. You'll notice that I stuck a little AI file. Now, this course does have some bigger file assets, which you're going to see actually when I go into the modules. Some things are 200K. If you're drawing just in vector world, it's like each file is 200K. Is it a big deal? No. Is it easy to upload your AI or your EPS file or your PDF file to me and it not be huge? Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's not a huge thing, but files can get big. So if you're bouncing from labs or computers to computers, make sure you have a thumb drive, make sure you name your thumb drive folder, digital illustration, and make sure you put everything in it. Your chapter 1 book is wicked easy, in my opinion. Simple anchor, drawing very basic shapes, taking a half a leaf, mirroring the other half, using the Pathfinder tool and uniting it. I mean, very simple things. So you'll notice in the announcement, I put a little coloring book inside of the announcement. This is what I would like you to outline, practice drawing as part of your chapter 1 submission. You could do your chapter 1 assignments, I think all of them in 45 minutes tops. So I wanted to give you a little something to practice. Will it look like this? Will it be perfect? Probably not, but I want to give you something for chapter 1 outside of just the 3 or 4 mini projects that take up like 7 pages in your book. It's very short. So chapter 1, I'll expect a little basic drawing and we'll open it up and I'll show you how the layers are set up and everything. I looked at the names in the grade book and most of you have dabbled in Illustrator and understand the basics of Illustrator already. So hopefully this isn't a big deal for you. Chapter 2 in your book has a little symbol on fire and a couple of graphics that are a little bit what I would consider complex. So those are all that you give me for chapter 2. There's 3 or 4 little mini step-by-step projects, a tree that you cut out of a circle, a basic little guy on fire, just some simple things. That's fine for chapter 2. So chapter 1 just kind of puts your toe into the water, practicing with the pen tool. Chapter 2 gets you into Pathfinder, unites and dividing and subtracting, and some little features on how to cut and merge things inside Illustrator. Chapter 1 and 2. All right, so let's bounce forward real quick. The syllabus is the same stuff. Just remember, I highlight it every single time. Send me an email if you're struggling. We have open labs every single day. I can do a Zoom chat anytime we need to as you're working on your projects. No big deals either way. Just reach out to me if you're having a little hiccup as we move along here, just so I can make sure that we're all on the same page and we're working towards the end final goal. Okay, so that bounces us into the modules. Most of you, although one name I noticed, I haven't noticed before in the grade book. So, but most of you have navigated through a Hodges Canvas course already. Canvas is our content management system. It's kind of how we deliver content. You'll notice that the syllabus has the same information as the About Your Instructor. So that's my email, my contact information, that sort of thing. The basic course overview is actually the same description that's on the front page of the syllabus and also on the home screen of our Canvas section, just saying what the description of the course is, the outcomes that we're trying to meet in the course, just the basic information. So I'll bounce to the course resources. If you've ever kind of navigated through a Canvas course for us before, we're using this digital illustration book called Vector Basic Training. It's really great. It's a Pearson tool, so it's got all kinds of student files. The beauty about illustration is the stuff doesn't get old. The projects are cool, whether it was 1980 or 2030. Like, it just is fun to draw things. It's got texturized skull and crossbones. It's got little guys on fire. Like, it's got cool graphics, quotation marks. So I think you'll enjoy the book. If you logged in to your course and you haven't used a course before, the course resources are only describing what's available in your vital source digital material. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that because I'm going to bounce down to there just because you have to launch this little window if you've never had a course with us before. This is our book. It's in its 2nd edition. It's a really fun little book. However you read the book and do your basic drawings is up to you. Some use their phone, some have a split screen where they use Illustrator or their drawing program on the left-hand side, and they have their book open up on the right-hand side. Whatever works for you to do the basic little things we're going to be doing in each chapter. You have to download the source files, which are found right here in your introduction. Where are your videos and files? Because there's over 7 hours of videos and student files. Some really cool little anecdotal things from the author and also the source files you need for the project. Like I said, they're not hard, they're not long. Each chapter will probably take you 45 minutes tops, I would think, to do the 3 or 4 projects, but they're good, they're fun, and they really quickly in a granular way reinforce some basic skills for you. So just know that they're floating out there, peachpit.com/redeem, and then you have to enter your specific code in order to redeem your files. I've actually uploaded what I could download from the source files in our module, which I will show you in a second. But I couldn't download all of the folders because some of the files are really big. Chapter 3 is like 2 gigs. So if you're downloading to your home computer, just know that if you're using a thumb drive to transfer files from one file, one computer to another, you're doing some work on your computer at work, and then you take your files home to work at home, you need a decent sized thumb drive. Nowadays, thumb drives are like a terabyte, so you shouldn't have too much of a problem. But if you have a 256 meg one, you ain't getting it done with chapter 3, because chapter 3 is really big. So just make sure you download those files. They have a VBT folder tagged to them when you download them, because you need them for the first 2 chapters. And here they are right down here in your book. Chapter 1 is about the pen tool, how to use the pen tool to create Bezier curves. And number 2 is kind of that creative merging, dividing, subtracting techniques that you can use with Pathfinder tools and such in Adobe Illustrator. I'm just going to click on chapter 1 real quick because I want to show you that it's a little bit of a write-up and a little bit of the project. So I'm going to scroll through a little history of the Bezier curve. It points to these figure anchors, which all it does is showing you this, where the curve is, what a forward directional anchor is, which is what this little thing is right here. It gives you a little history and it gives you some very basic projects. In your downloadable file, you have this guy. And you have a TIFF of this guy as just a black outline. Your job is going to be to use the pen tool and trace the black outline, the TIFF that the file gives you. It gives you a CC Illustrator file with all the individual layers silhouetted so you get the basic idea. It gives you the template to create on. It just asks you to trace the outline of this guy. So I just want to kind of go through chapter 1, see it'll show you there's an Illustrator file for it, which means when you download the source file, you're looking for the Illustrator file for him. And it talks a little bit about the math of the Bezier curve, how it works with node 1, node 2, and these directional anchors. So the book does a really good job of talking about math, showing you all the little individual shapes that make up this guy's face. Thousands of Bezier curves make up the illustration. And it shows you some very simple shapes to trace. The chapter 1 is not a difficult chapter. These are simple straight lines, a couple of very basic Bezier curves. And I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom here because it's going to show design drills. And it's going to show you all of these crazy finished raw shapes that come out like this. You can open the source file. You can click on the files to see how the curves are made, all of those things. This is the complex illustration with all the layers broken up called Body and Soul. And you'll see all the pen drawings. My coloring book is this. So instead of opening this file up, breaking it all apart and seeing all the curves that make up that drawing and this little pillow, and that's it for chapter 1. So you're going to see that all you have to do for me for chapter 1 is trace the outline of this guy's face and create the outline for my coloring book. Please open up the videos and take a look at each of these little mini projects, but they are really mini little projects just to kind of highlight the Bezier curve. And I'm actually going to do a little pen drawing with you tonight, just so we can reinforce the pen tool a little bit, how it works, what it looks like. Your chapter 2 in your book has 3 or 4 little mini projects. You're actually going to give those to me. They aren't hard. They're all about the Pathfinder tool. So you're going to see this little fire guy is the project you're going to draw. The layers has the beginning start to these lines. So you can kind of see what they look like. They have his face that we have to cut out using the Pathfinder tool. Don't worry, we're going to use the Pathfinder tool tonight, so I can just highlight it for you. But this little fire guy is the primary project for your chapter 2. They do a pretty good job of showing you, adding anchor points, creating curves, very simple little projects. The little anchor here with the little hole cut out of it using the Pathfinder tool. This one's already drawn for you in your Illustrator files. Little manipulations of changing rectangles into circles. This is a 45-minute chapter. There isn't much to it. It's about the Pathfinder tool mainly. And we're actually going to use the Pathfinder tool today. The circle with the tree, and you cut the tree out of the circle, which makes it look like this. Very simple. They give you the layers with the tree and the circle all by themselves. All you have to do is use the Pathfinder tool and cut the tree out. So there isn't a lot to it. It shows you how to divide, which means it cuts the little branches off here. It shows you the basics of what these little symbols in the Pathfinder tool means. And it uses the same tree to do all the different techniques. a 5-minute process. You're literally selecting each tree in the board and cutting it out. The anchors are already created for you. It just has you using the rotation tool to rotate it. Gives you half of the leaf. All you have to do is create the other half of the leaf. So there are enough mini projects to tinker around with in chapter 2. Just tinker around with them and give them back to me. There's 3 or 4 little mini projects there. The trees, the little fire guy, the anchor that you rotate and mess around with, and the little path tool that you use to create rounded shapes. And that's going to bring us towards the bottom. Let you mess around with settings a little bit. You should explore this because it allows you to adjust things like tolerance, angles, and that sort of things on the shape. Maybe something you'll use a lot in the long run, maybe not, but it's a good, this is just a lot of reading. It's a basic menu that we're just tweaking around with, and there are some short key commands. So it's really those 3 little mini projects in the chapter. It's all about settings after that, this little anchor thing here. So not a lot to chapter 2, but I think it's enough if you do the coloring book trace for me that you'll be able to do chapter 2 no problem. And that will bring us over to, and I'm actually going to close out the book now because everyone gets it. They'll be able to download the files and open up their book. I think the book is awesome. I think there's some really great projects for the book. And so chapter 1, we're going to do my coloring book. Chapter 2, you're going to do the leaf. You're going to do the little fire guy, and you're going to do the anchor project. Those are in your chapter 2 step-by-step assignments. And you do have a hot dog out of book illustration as your out of book project to see how well you learned practicing the pen tool, how well you learned creating things like merged, divided, united shapes inside of your Illustrator Pathfinder tool, and how you used your settings to modify basic shapes. Remember, everyone's different. Everyone draws a little different. Everyone's going to give me a different interpretation of the little hot dog illustration. That is okay, but just make sure you're committing the hours to your little out of book drawing assignment so that I get something that I feel like you really made a good effort at practicing. It's like riding a bike. The more you practice the pen tool, the better you'll get at it. If you're not using Illustrator, you could be using any other number of programs that have a pen tool that use the exact same principles and mathematical techniques as the Bezier curve uses inside of Illustrator. So just know that. Like, this isn't something that you only use in one application. You use it in a bunch of different applications, and this is all part of what I would consider vector basics. And that's why you see learning module 1 is vector basics. So put your 8, 9, 10 hours into your learning module to make sure you got the basics covered. Remember, save your stuff to a digital illustration folder on your computer, your thumb drive, and you can either upload Illustrator files to me when you submit them via chapter 1 and chapter 2 project. Remember, you click on them. Your little click has a submit button up here where mine says published, and you just give me the files. You can either give me individual Illustrator files or you can save them as PDFs. It doesn't matter either way. They shouldn't be very big files, so it shouldn't be an upload problem when you give them to me. It is a 4-week course, so time goes very quickly. Try to keep with the process of learning the basics before we go to more intermediate skills. So if you get a little behind, don't jump to learning module 2 next week and start doing the out of book project if you haven't done the hot dog illustration. Make sure you do it in baby steps. Even though there are due dates in the course, I give you plenty of wiggle room to do your projects in the 4 weeks. So just make sure you're continuing to work at it a little bit, work at the process, and let's see how you do with it. Now, you do have a basic student introduction discussion post. It's only 5 points, but you get to introduce yourself to the other members in the class. Please make sure you do that this week. It's only 5 points. Is it going to be the difference between an A or a B? Probably absolutely not. But there is that one example where it is the difference between an A and a B. If you're at 90.5 and you drop to 89. And I have to tell you, I'm not too apt to round up when you skip the student introduction post. And the reason you went from 90.5 to 89.5 is because you skipped that. you're going to get the 89.5, not the benefit of the doubt of the 90.0. So just be aware. Please make sure you do your basic student introduction. Now, right here, oh, wrong link. Right here in the book chapter files, you will notice I uploaded chapters 1, 2, 4, and 5 for you that you can download instead of going to peachpit.com/register like your book says. The total zip file is like almost 3 gigs when you do all of the chapter files in one folder. I couldn't upload all of those to your Canvas because it's too much. Canvas doesn't like anything over a gig. So I put the first, in essence, 4 of 5 chapters folders in there for you, but I couldn't give them all. So please make sure you click on the little download and take the first 2 chapters if you need to, just to get you started. So I'm going to download the zip. I'm going to go over here and double click it. So I unzip the zip just so I can show you what the chapter 1 folder looks like. It's all about Peter Bezier. And looky here, there is the outline of Peter as the pen tool drawing. And if you look here, Peter is completely drawn and finished. His Illustrator file actually has all of his parts already created. You also notice copyright warnings just saying that this is an educational illustration and that you can't go and use this as a logo for somebody's business after you're done downloading the Illustrator file, because it is a copyrighted file. So if I open this file, you'll actually notice that he is completely vector. So I'm actually going to hide the copyright so you can see this guy. See how I've moved his mouse over? That little thing is a layer. The text is a layer. His hair is a layer. Everything is a layer, all the way down to the base outline. So for me, it's understanding the shapes and having access to the base outline in order to practice drawing. Really, what you need to draw is this. Just outline the outline of his body and head. It's just a practice. It's just something to get you comfortable with the pen tool, which is this little thing right here. So you'll notice that my layers are locked, and I'm going to go in and add a new layer that isn't locked. So you can see that I can actually draw over top of this guy now. So I'm going to undo my pen tool clicking. I'm going to go down to my little layer guy here, and you'll notice that there he is. He is a template of shapes. He's just a template of shapes. So that brings us over to our pen tool. I looked in the grade book. Most of you have practiced before with the pen tool. You've had Graphic Design 1 or 2. Maybe you've used Adobe Animate or one of those places where we used Vecteezy and took some vector art and manipulated. The key to any drawing program is the pen tool. I don't care if you're using Procreate. I don't care if you're using SketchUp. I don't care if you're using Adobe Illustrator. I don't care which digital program you're using. The pen tool is always the tool that you have to know how to use. And that's what week 1 is all about, the pen tool. So I've selected it right here as the 3rd tool in our toolbar. Now, I want to spend a few minutes talking about how the pen tool works. When you take your pen tool, and I'm just going to use his ear as an example. If I click my mouse and let go, that little square is called an anchor, right? Once I click my mouse and let go, the anchor solidifies the beginning of my line. That's what this little thing is right here, the anchor. If I move my mouse anywhere around the document and click and let it go, it creates a straight line. If I continue to click my mouse and let it go, it continues to draw a straight line. Have I had students do this? and take about 8,000 anchor points in order to trace the outline of this head? I have, absolutely. Is it necessarily wrong? It's not necessarily wrong. It's just not as smooth as it could be. Could I use my selection tool and go in here into my stylize and round the corners or soften this thing a little bit after I sketched it? I absolutely could. I could go into all my straight lines and convert them to a smoother solution after I click 8,000 times in order to create the line. I've also given my students before a project where I gave them the silhouette of a rabbit and said, you have to draw this rabbit in 12 points. I don't care how you do it, but you get no more than 12 points to draw the outline of this little symbol of the rabbit. And that was a fun thing because it forces you to see how far you can go before you click your mouse again to continue your line. After a while of doing that, because I've been teaching digital illustration since 2004, so that's almost 20 years of digital drawing, I came to the conclusion that that was kind of cruel and unusual punishment because people would really sweat it out to see how low a number they could get to trace it. Well, I got it done in 4 points. I got it done in 5 points. And they kind of missed the point that it was about making a smooth drawing and not how few a points humanly possible. Everyone took it as a challenge. It was in order to create the silhouette. So I decided coloring books and doing fun drawings where you try to make it look good, but you also are concentrating on the fact that it's okay if you use a few points as you're learning to draw. It's not a big deal, but you do want to learn to curve a little bit your line. So here is how a Bezier curve works. If I click my mouse and let go, remember there's a forward anchor, my first anchor going forward. If I move my mouse anywhere else and click and hold the mouse down and pull, I start to create what's called a Bezier curve. So look at this. I just pulled my mouse straight down and I created a really beautiful curve that follows the top part of that ear. Once I'm happy with the line I've created, I let my mouse go. And you'll notice that my line has started to curve. Also remember that your stroke color is controlled down here. If I want to make it black, I got to click there. If I want to change the properties of my lines, remember there is a stroke palette over here, which looks like thin, medium, and thick line. If I want to make the line thicker, I bump the weight up. If I want to make the line thinner, I bump the line weight down, and you can go all the way to 0.25, which looks really nice, right? These little properties are the properties of your line. Does your line end with a butt cap? Does your line end with a round cap? When does a round cap look good? It looks good when you're drawing and you want to look like you drew it with a big pen, right? Because when you draw with a big pen, it's round. When you let the pen line go, there's a little curve into the line. This is called a projecting or projected cap, where the line stops a little bit early and it's a little thick at the end. Some people like that because when they're making jaggy lines, it makes the tip of the jaggy line extend further because the point is in the middle of the stroke, not the end of the stroke, which is what this is. So if you use the butt cap, when you have a shape like a V, that thing is pretty clean and sharp at the end. If you use this one, it means that it'll have a more jutting line based on the thickness out to the end. Now, once I click and drag and let go, this is my line. This is called my forward directional anchor. And why the forward directional anchor is important is because it controls my forward movement of my next line. So if I leave that forward directional anchor and I move my mouse to the tip of this ear and click and hold it down, click, drag, go to my next, see how that curve has already started to continue. So you can see that it has a predetermined curve based on my forward directional anchor. So if I go to here and click and pull, look at how my line works. It starts to curve both ways. Now, if you understand math a little bit, you're quickly going to see that pulling and dragging down gives me the wiggle I want. But take a look at what's happening now. My ear has curved too far to start with my next line. I'm going to show you a little trick as you start to learn the pen tool to make your heartache a lot less. The reason this is curving so far is because I pulled this directional anchor really far out when I clicked and dragged, which caused the math of my arc to start out a lot wider with my next line. If you move your mouse back to the original anchor point, you're going to notice this little inverted V symbol next to the pen tool. That's actually saying, do you want to remove the forward directional anchor? So if I click once and let go, the forward anchor is gone. Now look what happened. I'm back to straight line world. So now I can go down here, click and drag and continue the shape of my ear. So I wonder if that's going to help me out here. If I click here and curve, oh, wouldn't you know, I was able to do a much better ear shape. Now look, here's the problem. If I want to continue straight down, look at the wiggle that's happening in my line because I have a forward directional anchor. Well, that's like a 90-degree angle. I don't necessarily need the wiggle, but you have seen in illustrations the little tuck under the ear skin where the ear connects to the face and it curves a little bit. That's what this really is. So if I moved my mouse down and pulled a little bit, you'll notice I have the little tuck in that happens in the ear. You'll also know that a lot of illustrators do this and make a 90-degree angle at the corner of that point. Anywhere you get nervous about the new line point and how much it's curving out of the way that you want it to curve, you can always go back to the node, to the inverted V, and remove the forward anchor so that you can curve again. So as a best practice, working through your beginning or refresher to your digital pen tool, it is okay to always remove the forward directional anchor after you curve the line segment you're working on. Are you going to get a little bit of that bubble straight, bubble straight, bubble straight? You are, but it allows you to get comfortable with concentrating the line you're drawing and not thinking about the next line that you're going to create. Even though they tell you when you're driving your car, you shouldn't just be thinking about the move you're going to make. You got to think about the move that you're going to want to make down the road as well. You always got to kind of be thinking ahead, kind of like when you get a project at work and they give you something that has a long timeline. Yes, you're working on the immediate due date item, but you should also be thinking about what's going to be due after that. The pen tool is no different. You're curving lines that you have to pre-think the next line for. So look at how I'm curving this. And so I'm going to just deselect for a minute so you can see how this line looks around the outline. Look at how smooth that looks. And let me hide the refined layer. And man, if I didn't know any better, that's pretty decent ear and face and shoulder. But I did it mostly by removing the forward directional anchor. And you would never know it unless you really zoomed in. If you really zoomed in, you'll notice there's a slight wiggle of straight in his ear, right? Because I did remove the forward directional anchor. I'm going to let you into a little secret. If you went around and looked at large scale vector graphics throughout your life every single day, and you took a close look at it, there's going to be some drawings that remove the forward directional anchor. I actually could probably point out 10 on our campus of where if you looked at it, a curve went to a straight and went back to a curve, and it wasn't seamless. It wasn't perfectly smooth. So it's okay. And remember that as you're practicing your pen tool, you always have edit undo, right? Edit undo, which Command Z in our world, Mac world, I think PC world, Command is Option. So Option Z maybe in PC world for undoing. Yeah, so remember you can always undo with your pen tool. You can always undo with your pen tool. And so chapter 1 is all about practicing. So I'm going to go in and open up the coloring book so I can draw a little bit on screen so you can see the process reinforced as I'm drawing. So I'm not going to save that file, and I'm going to go in and open up my coloring book. And you're going to notice the Illustrator file I already set up for you. It has a locked template layer and a coloring or drawing layer. So I'm going to zoom in, hold down my spacebar to pan, and you're going to see the little girl's face right here, right? So here's my pen tool. I'm going to make sure I have no fill and only a stroke. And I'm just going to start drawing the little girl right here that's part of my thing. So let's see here. I'm going to put my first node. I picked there. Why? I picked there because it's an end point, right? It's a straight spot. And you're going to notice this is a pretty kind of curvy shape. Could I go all the way to here and pull down? I could, because you'll actually notice that if I remove that anchor, where the curve meets this straight would be hidden because my next shape meets to that shape. So I could cheat right here and make that a non-forward directional anchor, but I'm going to undo that, get back to the beginning here, and I'm going to show you how I think. Now, I'm going to notice, see how this is flat right here when I zoomed in? It's flat down here and it's flat right here. That's telling me that if I do this, I can follow the shape because there should be a node between the flat spaces in my drawing. So now I know so see the other flat right there. So I'm going to find the middle point. I'm going to curve it a little bit. I'm going to go back to my middle of my flat. I'm going to pull. I'm going to go to the middle here. I'm going to pull a little bit more. I'm going to go to the middle of the flat and look. So when you zoom in really close, you'll notice flat areas. Well, if I hide my template here, I got a little wiggle here that I don't love. Maybe I dragged a little bit too down, but a little bit too up. But the smoothness of this isn't bad. So let's go into my stroke palette, make sure that's opened up. And I'm just going to beef it up a little bit just so you can see the shape as it relates to the template. Now, something else I really like to do when I'm drawing, when I create a path and I'm happy with the shape, I like to lock that shape and go on to my next shape. And look at this one. This one's really easy because I can remove the forward directional anchors. So look how easy it is to draw this part of the face. Everything is met by a 90-degree angle. right? And look, it's flat when I zoom in, right? I can already see it. It's flat right there. So I'm going to go to the halfway point, pull and curve, go to the middle point, pull and curve, go to the middle point, pull and curve, go to the end. Now, one thing I do like to do, and it's me, is I like to make every shape that I can a closed shape. So you're actually going to notice I'm going to remove this directional anchor and go back and close this shape. So now you're going to see path and path, right? I locked this one so that it didn't interact with this one because they do overlap right here. So once I drew it and I was happy with, I locked it. So now look, much better. So now I'm going to lock this one. I'm going to use my pen tool and I'm going to create my next shape. So I'm going to do the hair. So I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to remove the directional anchor. See how it's kind of flat right here, kind of flat right here. So that means I'm going to go to about my middle spot and click and drag, go to my next middle spot, click and drag, go to my next middle spot, click and drag, go to my end, click and drag. So you're seeing exactly how I think, click and drag. Now you'll notice this is a pretty straight line. So I'm just going to click and go to the end, click and go to the end. And remember, we're overlapping here. Click and move, click and go to the end and drag. And now I have shape number 3. Now, why is it important to close these shapes? It's important to close the shapes because if I ever wanted to go back in and add a fill to my shapes, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to unlock all of my layers so you can see them. So this is the face, the skin, right? So I need the skin to be like skin. So let's just give it a flesh tone. I don't know. It's a cartoon, right? The hair, I can use my eyedropper because I already did it once. And I have the beginning of my shapes. Now, your book talks about the Pathfinder tool where you can actually take shapes and unite them. If I wanted to, I could take these 2 shapes and open up my Pathfinder tool and merge those 2 shapes, which means they're now one shape. Now, here it is right here. Now, what I would have done if I knew I was merging those shapes, I would have made this shape go behind this shape. And the reason I would have done that is because if I select this and merge them, there's no line between here. If they aren't overlapping like the anchor is with the little circle in the hole and it cuts out the anchor, you will get this from the merge, this little line right here. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what you're looking for, to make it look like a ponytail a little bit, to have this little space right here. But do know I don't fill in any color in my shapes until I have everything outlined. Because if not, I can't see the eyeballs in order to draw those shapes if I've already filled the face in. And you'll actually, well, maybe you didn't recognize it, or maybe you did. I made sure to draw the whole shape of the head before I drew the eye, because the eye will be on top of the shape of the head, because this is stacked in an order. I can drag and move the order by clicking on the sub layer and dragging it up and down, right? If it's not in the right order. But in my brain, when I draw digitally, I start background to foreground. I draw silhouettes up to details. I draw outlines up to details. I don't draw details first, because if I draw details first, the outline will be on top of the details. So now if I lock these two, right, I'm still on the coloring layer, and I get my pen tool and I click and drag, click and drag, and click and drag. Now, if my shape is not a full shape, I don't have to close it, right? I don't have to close the shape. I can just go back to the selection arrow and deselect it. So if it is a shape that isn't closed, when you're done drawing it, you can go over here and deselect it. So I'm going to lock that one. I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to draw the next one. I'm going to use my selection arrow. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to lock it. I'm going to go to my pen tool, and I'm going to draw the next one. I'm going to use my selection arrow. I'm going to deselect it. I'm going to lock it. I'm going to use my pen tool and use the next one. And now you'll notice that I've got her head completely drawn. So I'm going to continue drawing her arms and legs and everything, just so that you can see my process to draw the girl that's part of this little coloring book. Don't get frustrated. Practice makes perfect. Every person that ever hopped on a bike did not start pedaling with perfect balance right off the get-go. That's why someone invented a balance bike where there weren't even any pedals and you just sit on the thing and push with your feet. They invented that because enough people struggled with the balance just to pedal the bike that they needed to invent something to help them with the basic pedal. So don't get frustrated, just slowly work through the process. Your book is really good in getting you to draw the basic shapes in the chapter. The coloring book is much more difficult, but it is a really good practice. And it's a really good way to get comfortable with the pen tool before you do your hot dog mascot out of book. If you only get done the chapter 1 and 2 and the coloring book tracing by next week, that's okay. I'd rather you have some practice before you jump into the out of book, which is a little more difficult. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with doing chapter 3 before you finish your hot dog drawing, but I don't want you to get beyond that before you do your out of book project, because part of the reason I put in out of book projects is to show you the time it takes to create a finished piece of design when you're learning. It takes time to do a professional project. So that's part of the granular feeding of the skills, the outcomes, and the learning process of the class. So ease yourself along, don't get frustrated. All right, now I'm going to do the arm next. I have everything else locked. You'll notice, gosh, I don't know if you ever watched the Cartoon Network, that the particular artist that does this style of illustration, you're going to quickly see, I think there's like Powder Puff Girls or something. There's a TV show about kids in elementary school. It's all the same artist. You're going to see a lot of the same techniques: straight line, curve lines, straight line. You're going to see a lot of the exact same techniques and how this particular artist draws. And I have a feeling it's because, now, should I have gone a little bit further down in the line? If I change my caps, does it help me? Not enough. All it did was extend that down a little bit. So I'm going to do undo, undo, undo. I'm just going to undo a few steps just so I can get back to where I was, right? I got to get back to where I was. I'm going to extend it all the way down so I get the full extent of the finger. Now I can undo. I can go up here, curve it a little bit, get up to the top, curve it a little bit, get back down to the bottom, click and drag, remove the forward anchor. And I'm just going to quickly draw this, just quickly draw it so that we can see the process that I'm using. I'm going to round that finger, come back, do that, undo the extra thing, go all the way to the body. And remember, I'm going to close the shape, right? Even the arm, I'm closing. So if I ever want to go back and add color to it, it's a closed shape. I like to close all my shapes. I also like to close the shapes because if I ever want to use the Pathfinder tool, cutting shapes out and doing different things, a little bit easier with the closed shape. So now let me go back to my layers. I'm going to lock that layer. Now, one thing I want to just talk about real quick. You see how this character has a body, but you don't see the whole shape. You only see this little tiny wedge right here. I'm going to create the rest of the body. Is it a big deal? I don't know, maybe not. I'm actually going to drag it below the arm too, just so that if I chose to color the arm and color the body, the shirt, you would still see the shape of the shirt. So when you're outlining, whether it's a photograph or an illustration, make sure that you close your shapes so that they are fillable later, because you never know when you need to Pathfinder it, cut it out, unite it, do different things with it. So, and I'm going to do the same thing with the skirt. Even though her arm hides part of the body connection, I'm going to draw the skirt as if it was a completed shape. Right? So you see what I'm doing. I'm just making sure I have all my ducks, all my T's crossed, because now I have the shapes as full shapes. If I ever had to go back and color it in, I'm actually going to go back and color it in once I finish the girl, so you can kind of see what I'm thinking. Now you'll notice with the legs that it goes all the way to the corner of the feet, right? So I'm visualizing this as a solid leg. So I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom. I'm going to click and drag, remove the forward anchor, go all the way to the next part of the leg, click and drag, remove the forward directional anchor, go all the way to the top of the leg, click and drag, and remove the forward directional anchor so that I have the whole leg. You're going to notice that the leg has stripes. I'm going to guess the stripes are socks. So if I zoom in, I bet these are stripes of socks. So, do I want to make this individual shapes because they could be rainbow socks? Or do I want to make this one big shape and just stripe the socks inside of it? Me, I do every shape I can possibly visualize as an independent shape. And I'm going to show you when I fill it in why that's important. So there's my next one. Then I'm going to lock that. I'm going to do my next one. So I'm going to click there, click there, click here, click and drag, click undo, click there. I'm going to lock that one. Then I'm going to go to my next one, click here, click here, click there, click there. There's my next one. Oh, and then I'm going to lock that one. And then, do I need the last one? I don't know. If the stripes go all the way to the bottom of the sock, I might need the last one. So I'm going to go ahead and just create my basic shape here, because I'm going to show you a trick at the end here, how I visualize and think sometimes. All right, so let's lock that one. And I got to go to my second leg here because I want to finish this illustration in this lecture so we can kind of see the last part of digital drawing with a basic pen tool and kind of how my brain works when I'm drawing. So I'm going to curve that a little bit. these legs overlap, so I have to curve that line a little bit. And I got that leg, so then let's lock that. And good news for me is I only have 2 stripes on this sock because it's all you can see. So I'm going to curve that. Now I'm going to do straight, straight. For the sake of time, I'm going to make that line straight, even though if I zoomed in, I probably would have made that curved. And this last little piece, which is just straight lines. So I have the basic shape there. So let's lock that. And the last thing I have to do is my feet. And there's 2 feet, and you'll notice it's made up of 2 shapes. So the first one is going to be this outer foot. And I like square toes. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to curve here. I'm going to take it to the bottom, curve there. So there's my foot. I'm going to lock it. And remember, I did the outer shape, and now I'm going to do the inner shape. Now, the beauty about this is that's pretty much one line. I'm going to do that. And keep in mind, I've been drawing since like 93. So I've used a pen tool a really long time. So, and I've done different techniques and different things with it. And I'll show you a few ways to kind of cheat and hide some things after I took kind of a shortcut with things like the flat line right here. I'll show you. So I'm going to lock that. I'm going to curve, go down to the bottom here. I'm going to curve that out a little bit. And then the foot kind of looks straight right there. So I'm just going to bring that. And just for the sake of the process, I'm just going to curve this so it fits inside the line. Then I'm going to lock that. And I'm going to do my last curve. So I'm just going to curve my inner shoe here, my inner sock. Curve this. Oh, I got to remove my directional anchor. I'm going to go down here, curve the bottom part of the foot. And I'm going to show you in a minute as we fill this thing in, some of the ways I like to cheat sometimes in order to make the image fit the way I want it to. Okay, so I've got this little girl all traced out now. There she is. I've got all of the shapes locked. I have everything going on here. So I'm going to unlock all of my mini shapes now that I have this thing drawn. I'm just going to go in here and click each one of my locks, unlock. I always like to check every once in a while, see what I'm unlocking. I'm going to go down here and finish unlocking everything. And I'm going to use my selection arrow and draw a big selection arrow. And I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to do that because what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go in here and add a new layer and call it outline. I'm going to lock coloring and I'm going to do edit, paste in place. And so now you're going to see that I actually put an outline on top of my coloring. The reason I did that is because now I can hide this, unlock this, and watch what happens. I'm going to pick her hair, make it yellow. I'm going to pick her face, right? Just add some kind of color here. I don't even know the characters here. I don't know what they look like, but we'll do that. I'll click on the arm. I'll use my eyedropper to make sure it's the same color as that. I'm going to pick the legs and I'm going to do that and pick the other leg and do that. I'm going to pick her body and I'm going to make it, I don't know, her shirt maybe light blue. I'm going to make her skirt a darker blue. And let's zoom in because I got to see her socks and everything. So let's pick sock 1 and maybe it's a green stripe. Let's pick sock 2 and maybe it's a different shade of green. And let's see what we have here. Or do I have another shape there? Let's make it a light blue. Do I have another shape here? Let's make this a dark blue. Now I'll just bring this back over. Drop it back at where it's supposed to be. And then I'll pick this and maybe I'll make it this shade for that one. And I'll pick this one and maybe I'll make it the dark shape. All right, so you're seeing what I'm doing here. Gosh, shoes. What does this character even look like? Here she is. Let's make the shoes. She's a colorful gal, so maybe we'll make them a deeper shade of, I don't know, a red or something. So now I can pick on the other shoe shape and make it that. And then I can pick the soles and I can make the soles darker. So that I can pick this shape and use the eyedropper and make it darker. And so now you see all of the shapes and all of the outlines. You'll notice this arm right now currently is not in the right spot, right? So if I hit the little thing here, this little dot here is telling me which layer is the arm layer. This thing right here. I got to move this thing up. So let's move it up there. So it's in front of the body, right? So that's why I made completely closed shapes. Now, I might take it one step further and highlight this and turn off the stroke. So look at what it looks like with no stroke. Well, why did I do that? I did that because this layer is the outline layer. Well, zoom in. I've got an issue right here. This thing is in front of the arm, right? This thing is in front of the arm. So let me zoom in here real quick. I got a problem. So the pen tool, see the pen tool here? Watch what happens when I move my mouse. It allows me to add a point to this shape. So watch what happens when I add a point. And I'm going to add another point and add another point. So I can use my direct select and pick just that point. Because my outline was on top of all of my shapes filled, I can go in and not make them full shapes. I can go in and manipulate the full shape. So why is that important? Look at this one. My line goes across my arm. And this is a really important skill to just understand. So if I put a node there and a node here, I can use my direct select and get rid of, let me zoom in, make sure I got my points all correct. Shape here. Let's take a look at the pen tool. Let's make sure we have everything drawn the way we wanted. And let's see what is going on with my arm. Oh, I got another one from the other shape behind it, right? Problem solving time. I have to add a point. But it's important to know that that's a full shape back there. I'm using the outline. And so a really good thing to just realize, right? Comic book artists, Disney animators, they had two different jobs. One was the outliner, the pencil drawer, and the other one was the painter, coloring person that filled in the line art on top, coloring underneath, when they created their animations, or in comic book world, created their full color pages. Those were two jobs. So when I drew solid shapes. I selected all those solid shapes so that I could make an outline that allowed me to basically pencil in around the overlapping areas. So now I've got a perfect girl. And now I have the bubble. So here's my outline. Here's my coloring. I would lock my outlining, and I actually probably would just, no, I could leave it turned on, but now I can go back into my coloring and I can start creating my next shapes, my little person, Be patient. Let's see how you do with the coloring book process after you do your chapter 1. And even you could do your chapter 2 step by step before you practice with your pen tool and try to do a basic drawing outline of the coloring book page. Keep whatever the stage is that I see your practice at, even if it's just the outline of the coloring book for your chapter 1 submission, I'm okay with that. I want to see you practicing the pen tool so you can get comfortable. It's only going to get more involved as we practice more and more with the pen tool, as we get more and more complex processes. Next week is all about texture. Texture is applied to closed shapes that have complex cutouts. So we go from pen tool to Pathfinder tool to textures, and you would be amazed at kind of the intermediate level of pen drawing, what you can do with textures. We do patterned faces, we do skin that has goosebumps on it. There are so many things you can do inside Illustrator to make it look not vector or not raw drawing on paper and pencil in digital world, that'll really open your eyes to the potential of digital illustration. Now, that lecture went about an hour and a half. I try to not go over an hour and 45 minutes in the lecture because many of you are going to watch it back later as part of the Learning Module 1 recap or follow along. So I'm just going to really quickly go back into our learning module just to highlight the things in the process I would like you to do. Make sure you download your chapter files. At least chapter 1 and 2 are the ones I provided for you, and know that you have your digital book to do your step-by-step. Also know that you need your student introduction post just to introduce yourself to the class. We have a total of 3 drawings to do for week 1. Your chapter 1 coloring book, after you do your practice step by step, your anchor, your leaf, your basic little things in chapter 1. Chapter 2, you got your little fire guy. That's the primary thing for chapter 2, is the little fire guy, the little logo. Coloring book and fire guy, first 2 projects. Your long one, your over the weekend, I would guess, or maybe a day or 2 before class, would be your little hot dog illustration. That is your out of book. We also have a topic share, which you should know if you've had me before, because I love them. It's the opportunity for a discussion board for Learning Module 1, where you share maybe something you learned or something you saw that was cool as you started your digital illustration class. Knowing that a class normally is about 8 hours of production time, kind of 8 hours of working through stuff. Chapter 2 is probably 45 minutes of step-by-step. Chapter 1 is probably 45 minutes of step-by-step. So we're at like an hour and a half, probably a couple of hours to draw your little outline of your coloring book. So we're probably at like 3 or 4 hours. You should commit 4 or 5 hours, a little half a day maybe, to do your hot dog illustration. I know what's going to happen if you like digital illustration. You're going to end up spending 3 times that because it's fun. Me, I end up spending 25 hours on something that should have taken me 8 hours because I'm like, add another shape, add another texture, add another detail, add another layer. Like, I just thoroughly enjoy the process of drawing on the computer. Hopefully you get that too, keeping in mind that Learning Module 1 is really our basics. Just the pen tool and the Pathfinder tool, very simple shapes. Don't sweat if the curve doesn't go exactly the way you want it. Just do edit, undo, and try again. Edit, undo, edit, undo, edit, undo. Remove forward anchor, remove forward anchor, remove forward anchor. Whatever it takes for you to get your basic shapes and get moving forward. Keep the ball rolling forward. Remember also, if you don't remember anything else from this lecture, When you get done a shape, lock it in the layers palette so that your next shape doesn't interact with the shape you just drew. Because if you don't lock it and your pen tool touches the other shape, it will merge with the other shape because it thinks you're trying to draw a merged object. So each individual shape, lock it and move on to the next one. Okay, we're at an hour-and-a-half lecture. It's 8 o'clock. This is the time where I let students download source files, open up their book and read it a little bit, get comfortable with the learning module, and start their projects. If you're at home and you're working and you want to take an exhale and work on it a little bit later tonight or maybe tomorrow, no problem. If you're asynchronous and you haven't even watched this yet, hopefully you're watching this and you're hearing this at this point in time. Watch this before you start your project so I don't get any kind of weird questions people ask me because they didn't watch the video and they just start the project and they're not sure about one thing or the other thing. Please make sure you watch the video. I will post this in the announcement section with lecture 1 recording. Please watch, exclamation point. So hopefully, well, please watch first, exclamation point, so that you watch it before you start. Students in the class, I let them download their resource files. If they want to go to the lab, they want to go home and work, whatever they want to do. They know their mission, so now they just have to get it done. Remember, I'll be lecturing for about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes at the beginning of next class, which is next Tuesday. So we'll be at it again, and we'll be moving on to textures and a little bit more intermediate. The more you practice, the more you'll get out of it. So I'm hoping if this is your only class for the month, that you commit a little time to practice. And it doesn't have to be all at once. Draw a little bit, take a break, and come back to it. As long as you save your file, your last name, and whatever project you're working on, you can always reopen it and go over again. Once we get our book assignments under our belt and we start to be doing a little bit more of a professional illustration, if you're comfortable in an app world, like an iPad, Adobe Draw, or I don't know, Procreate or any of those, I am open to exploring other drawing tools as we do some out of book stuff, but I want you to try to concentrate on learning the basic skills so that you're better with the other things because you have the foundation of this thing. So I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to post it to the announcement section in a few minutes. Okay, gang, bye.